Yes, welcome. My name is Marcus Vlaar. I'm the creative director and one of the founders of Enrange. And we're a serious game and gamification company, and we've been around for 21 years. And many of the games that we did are also about recruitment, onboarding, learning and development, all kind of HR subjects. And today I want to talk about once you created your EVP and you have this articulated EVP, how do you get it across? And I want to look at it from a game design perspective. As a game designer, I think we can learn a lot from the experiential nature of games. Like Paula said before, the most important thing for a candidate is really to understand what it is like to work for a company. And I think with games are really about learning by doing, about simulating real life experiences. In fact, games are experience machines, very close to the real thing. They immerse you in the experience, and they use storytelling. They're triggering your curiosity. They let you actively explore unknown worlds, new surroundings. And in fact, the most important thing, they're fun. They trigger your intrinsic motivation. And you know, when people are in a playful mode, they will produce endorphin and their brains get more active. So I think it's a really great medium. So let's look at it. And first I want to talk a little bit about why do we play at all? Why are humans so playful in nature? And then I want to move to 4 best practices that we did in the past decade, actually. 2 of them are about recruitment games and 2 of them are about onboarding. And the last 2 are using new technologies like AR and VR. So we can gaze a little bit into the future, like what do these new technologies bring in terms of creating great experiences. Well, so why do people play games at all? In fact, 2.7 billion people play games on a daily basis. If you look at a game like Candy Crush, a casual game that many of us have played, you know, once or twice, or maybe every day, and you will count the number of minutes that people play that on a day. It equals 4.3 million FTE, full-time employees. So if Candy Crush, if it wasn't a game, but if it was a company, it would be the biggest company in the world in terms of how many time and effort people put into it. So why do they do that? That's a question that I've been asking myself for the past 20 years. Why do people put all this time and effort in playing games? Because there's no real extrinsic awards. You're not getting paid for it. So if you look at this picture, these are pictures taken from behind the screen of people playing video games. And the thing that strikes me most, if you look at these pictures, and maybe you have the same, is the variety of emotions that you see on the people's faces. And I think what games are really good in is in getting emotional engagement. You will see excitement, I see sadness, I see laughter, I see laser focus, I see all these emotions. And if you want to really engage people in your brand story, you have to touch them on an emotional level, because we know from behavioral psychology that if you communicate with people on a rational level, people will also react rationally. They will become critical and they will come up with counter arguments. And you want to take away this critical distance. So how can we use the tricks that are behind games? That's what I'm gonna talk about. Why do we need to play? Playing is much older than human culture. All mammals play. And actually they do that to train for the unexpected. They're creating safe environments where they can experiment with new behavior, whether it's learning to hunt or social behavior or mimicking adult behavior. That's why animals and humans play in a natural way. And in fact, when you're playing, you're switching between in control and out of control situations, and also deliberately creating stress situations. And this is a a cognitive challenge in a way that in real life would be called stress, but in a game you call it fun, because actually that is the thing that makes games fun, that it's stressful, but it's still safe. So that is something that we can leverage when we're creating onboarding and recruitment experiences, because essentially playing is getting familiar with new situations that you haven't been in before, which is actually the same thing with recruitment and onboarding. So let's move to some best practices here. The first one I want to show you is a game that we built quite some years ago for Hout of Buruma, which is a law firm, a Dutch law firm. The big challenge for this law firm, it competes with the top 5 law firms in the Netherlands, and they're all chasing the same top candidates, of course, every year. And how can we create, that was the question, how can we create an excellent experience that attracts new hires and that distinguishes itself from the other companies? We created a game that is in ways of storytelling is showing the brand values of this company, and they are looking for people that are more creative. They're not looking for scholars, but they're looking for solution-driven people that are really good in problem solving, that are stress resistant, and that also have good social skills. So we created a game that touches upon all those competencies. That is about collaboration, that is about finding creative solutions, and it is about good analytical skills. Let's watch 2 small fragments that I took out of other videos that give you a little bit of an idea of how a game like this could look like.
The deal of the century. A Chinese state-owned enterprise is taking over the oldest family business in the Netherlands. The pressure is on.
We have limited time to prove we are worthy.
It's a race against time. Nothing is what it seems. Everybody has their own interest. There is no room for mistakes.
Go to the second clip.
The players only have 90 minutes to convince enough shareholders of the target company to sell their shares and to come up with solutions to hidden problems. It is crucial for teams to choose a strategy and to divide tasks amongst one another in order to avoid losing time. The students have to divide their attention between a central game computer, a laptop with over 100 documents, and a paper file filled with essential information. In this time, they are confronted with video chats, text chats, film clips, emails, news flashes, websites, social media, and more.
So, well, these are just some excerpts from the 1.5-hour game that already starts when people are at home, where the game starts, and it really tries to be a simulation of a day in the life, but then a very special day in the life. What we've seen is that when people get immersed in a recruitment game like this, they tend to show much more authentic behavior. We've done some research, and we found out that there's almost 0 correlation with socially desirable behavior in a game like this. So I think the takeaway of this game is that a great recruitment experience should be two-way traffic. So each candidate should have an excellent and positive brand experience. And this is really about storytelling. Like Paula said, storytelling is much more effective than giving the sheer facts. In fact, it's 22 times more effective. People remember what they heard in the story much more than the facts. And the second is for the company to also retrieve valuable data on authentic candidate behavior to select the best people. And I think this is something that is really inherent to games, because in a game you already measure the player's performance, and you can measure their behavior, the choices they make, what they put most effort and time in, and you can relate that to competencies. Okay, let's move to a completely different experience. This is about a place that you usually don't get to see much of. This is a game that we made for the Royal Air Force. And, you know, an Air Force base is a place where it's very inaccessible to the public usually. That means that there's a very limited awareness public awareness of the job diversity and the employment opportunities within an Air Force. People have they have their ideas, but they're not realistic usually. And in this game, we created a virtual base that you can visit and that you can walk around and that you can discover. That makes this environment much more accessible. So you can roam around the base and you encounter a variety of occupations that contribute to the operation of an Air Force base. There's also 6 games that you can play, and they provide a realistic experience of the different occupations and what you need to have in you to apply. So in fact, it's also a kind of a self-selection game. So you can walk around. There's a quick reaction test that is really about, are you able to become a pilot, for example. There's also more things like technical motor revision games where you have to repair an airplane. There's puzzles, there's a health condition test that you can do and see if your physical condition is, if you're in the right shape and what you can do about it. Let's also see a small clip to get a little experience here.
Mission is intervention inbound slow.
Area under control.
Hartslag in rust te kunnen meten moet je 1 minuut even helemaal niets doen. Blijf rustig achter de computer zitten.
Serious games.
So again, it's really about getting people in this first-person perspective and having this inside-out perspective of your brand. In as a matter of fact. Okay, let's move on to more maybe high-tech solutions using AR, augmented reality. I hope you all know what augmented reality is. It's about putting an extra layer on top of the real world. And a good example of this is something that we did for Roche, which is a big pharma company based in Switzerland. And the most important thing is that they have a very collaborative culture in Roche. They have 150 new people to onboard every year, but the diversity of these people is enormous. It's from bus drivers to potential Nobel Prize winners, and they used to have this welcome day. And the most important part of this welcome day was making people understand the complex value chain of Roche and trying to make them feel that collaboration is at the heart of that. It's a very intricate process that clarifies how medication, diagnostics, research, personal healthcare, how they all come together. But this welcome day used to be pretty boring. It was like lectures and classrooms, and what we did, we worked together with Roche to find a more innovative and interactive way. So what we kept is that these 150 people from all different backgrounds and with all different competences come together. And we created a classic board game combined with augmented reality. So you can look through iPads and then you will see a different layer, an extra layer on top of the game that reveals itself while you're playing. The goal of the game is that there's different storylines that you have to fill in the missing gaps. So there's petri dishes, of course, because it's Roche, it's a pharmaceutical company, and you have to put these petri dishes in in the right places on the tables that you're standing around, and you have to collaborate there. And they make, if you put them on the right place, there's a story that is evolving there. Well, by using the iPads, you can get hints. So you're looking at real life objects here, and so everybody can look through this iPad and get hints. They pop up. New information is unlocked. You get feedback on what you do. You get rewards. You move on to the next level, and so you're guided, all of you, through the game, and unravel this complex value chain. There's another little video, and this is really, for me, this feels like a Harry Potter game. It is there, you're talking to people. There's also this extra magical layer that is revealing itself. Okay, maybe the takeaway that I have is that here, technology, it should always be an enabler. It shouldn't be a gimmick. I'll come back to that later. It's always a means and not a goal. So the gameplay here is kept very simple, and technology is actually, it feels very natural. I have time, I hope, for one last case, which is a VR game that we made for Albert Heijn. Albert Heijn is one of the largest retail organizations of the Netherlands. It has a staff turnover of 30,000 people a year. So that's enormous. They are all about 15 to 20 years of age. And the most important considerations for them to work for Albert Heijn is just the salary and the location, whether it's nearby. So onboarding used to focus on practical training, getting them up to speed as soon as possible, and not so much on vision and mission and on the brand values, and which is very much the client experience. So they were missing on that, and we made this VR experience to immerse the players much more in the world of Albert Heijn. Also get familiar with new situations, like how does a client conversation work? Let's look at a little clip. I made it myself 2 days ago. So it's a bit shaky, but it gives you an idea of what you see when you're using your cardboard, because that's what candidates get, a simple cardboard VR glasses, and you put your smartphone in it, and then you can look around, and it has a 360 view, and you're in the first person perspective of a new employee, and you can walk around and see what's going on. They take you to a historic place, the first shop that was built. You are present at conversations with clients, so you feel more familiar with it once you really get there. Okay, so maybe share some tips to finish. So if you're using these kind of new technologies, make sure it adds value to the experience, and especially to the brand experience, and avoid using it as a mere gimmick, because it won't work. I think a second thing, it is of crucial importance that you align the gameplay with the brand and the EVP. So you have to make conscious decisions on multiplayer or single player, or the use of technology, the game mechanics used, the player perspective, and things like that. And then thirdly, I think it's very important to get with a good partner. You know your EVP and your audience best, but find a professional and mature game design studio if you want to make something like this to closely collaborate with, and there is very important. And of course, that doesn't work if you don't have an articulated EVP. So understand all the tips that have been given before by William and Paula. They are so true. Start with an articulated EVP. Otherwise, you can make the most high-tech game. It won't work. It's very much about the message, and then game principles, storytelling can help you to get that message across and to make it emotionally engaging. Okay, I think that was it. Thank you very much for listening.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Marcus, and thank you very much for the examples that you've been able to share with us. I think you know, there's a lot of trepidation or concern about some sort of VRs and ARs, especially at the moment as well. But obviously, we're all using technology a lot more nowadays, and we're going to have to start thinking about what we're able to do in this virtual environment. So, are you seeing a little bit of an increase in what people are doing with technology from a hiring and onboarding process? Is that something that you've seen increasing?
Well, there's a change in technologies. I think we've been doing these kind of games for the past 20 years. It started with, let's say, what we now would call very low-tech solutions. And of course, the technologies that we can use, they become more and more sophisticated. But I think the trend is always that technology is is getting on the background. So it should be invisible, in my opinion. And it's not about technology; it's about about emotional engagement, and that can also be very low-tech. I do think that we are moving towards times where technology is a part of our life, and especially with the new generation, and they grow up with the most professional, the best games. So they're very used to visual overload and to be visually triggered. So it makes sense, of course, to use these kind of techniques also in your brand communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when you talk about the low-tech offerings, so obviously VR and AR can also come with quite a big cost, and at the moment there might be some companies that don't have that. What recommendations could you give to people that maybe want to experiment with that emotional engagement and gaming piece, but perhaps on a small budget or just venturing into that low-tech field? Where would you recommend they start?
Yeah, well, on the low-tech side, there are so many beautiful off-the-shelf solutions already that can be customized for a client. Like there's a lot of solutions that use game principles, like quizzes or anything that triggers interaction. I think it's very important to put the candidate in an active modus and in the playful modus, so that can be done with let's say with simple quizzes that are very cheap to implement and that you can do yourself. And the second is I think I would we at Runch we also use very simple low-tech onboarding games that are made by trainees, for example, and every new trainee works on this game, so it puts in his own experiences with the company, so it stays relevant. But I would say look around for off-the-shelf solutions and start to experiment with that.
Okay, great. We do have a few more questions, but I'm just going to launch our event feedback poll for everyone. So it just gives us a little bit of insight into what you enjoyed throughout this session. So if whilst we're going through the questions, you're able to do the event feedback as well, that would be really helpful. So I've just launched that for you, so it should have popped up for all you attendees there. Another question that we've had is a brilliant one, actually, is at what stage do you bring in a game as part of the recruitment process?
Well, in fact, it can be all across the process, from the first moment that people will let's say consider you as a potential employer, to let's say really the assessment part, where you really want to assess and select people. It will be different games though. So I think when you, for example, we made a game for PwC that was very much about what are our brand values and how do they match with your personal values. So in this game, you will take a lot of decisions and you will see whether there's a match with the way that you act upon things and the way PwC would do that. So that would typically be something that would be to trigger your interest in this employer as your potential new employer. When you're moving forward, I think it will become more important also for the employer to get data from the candidate. So your game plan will change throughout throughout the process. Yeah.
Okay, so it really depends on what it is that you want. So, for example, if you had a really high volume sort of hiring process, it might be that initial part to try and get people to self-select whether they'd be right for that role. That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah, brilliant. And have you found, or have you seen with some of your clients, that the general volume of candidates applying would decrease, but actually the quality of hire has improved? Or does that have to be a specific metric when you're creating these kind of games?
Yeah, it is. Of course, this is the goal always. So
Yeah.
there are also gamification or gaming is never a goal in itself. The goal would be to have a higher quality of new hires, so of course that is measured, but it's always I must say it's really hard to get good data on it because there's so many aspects of the whole brand experience that work together. But I do know, for example, with the first game that I showed, that there have been some research there. This company used this game for over 8 years, and they let's say how do you call that, students knowing the name of this company have risen to 100% during that period. So that was really important for them as well. But finding out whether the quality of the new hires has become better is very hard, because you really have to wait for 2 or 3 years to notice whether they stay longer or they are better. I don't know. So I'm afraid I don't have that data. I would like to.
Yeah, it's hard to put a value on the quality of candidates and hires in any case, isn't it? So
that's right.
True. From your experience, are there any industry sectors where gamification for employer branding is hard to apply, or is it better suited to specific industries?
I would say no, because games are simulations of real life, and you can, like I was showing this Royal Air Force game, and of course this is something that you would typically think of when you think about gaming. But the legal case before that, or the PwC case, the legal case is much more about social behavior. So even also, I think there's not one sector that is particularly. It's just like you have to use your creativity and say, what is my main message here, and how can we put this into a playful setting? So we did it for healthcare, we did games for legal companies, we did it for pharmaceuticals. It doesn't matter. Just pick something that is really interesting to make a game around.
Yeah, brilliant. And one final question for you, Marcus, is what about candidates who don't like gaming at all? Are they at a disadvantage? And perhaps maybe for the older generations, is it a disadvantage for them? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course, that's the question that we always get.
Yeah.
And I think, so of course, you shouldn't have a disadvantage so we're always making games for non-gamers, and that is something that you have to keep in mind. And then, but every person is playful in a way, and there's a really good theory about different player types, motivational types, and you have to make sure that some people are motivated by competition, some people are motivated by mastering new skills. So you have to make sure you have a balanced experience that is interesting enough for your target group, and it should be accessible also for people that are not digital savvy. So we always make very simple. The games are not simple, but the interaction should be simple. And then I haven't encountered problems with that.
Yeah.
But this is it's a matter of good design, I think.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Marcus, that was really insightful. I really enjoyed it, and I particularly enjoyed some of the games. I quite want to do the Air Force one myself, just out of interest to see if I would pass. But no, Marcus, thank you so much for sharing your insight and your thoughts as well. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. No problem. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're now at the end of our speaking sessions. The virtual event, so where BPS have their virtual stand, and you've got some other bits and pieces as well, our in-house recruitment stand as well. That is still up and running until 12:30. So do go and have a talk to those guys. A really big thank you to our speakers today. So we had Marcus, we had William, and we also had Paula as well. So a huge thank you to you all. Nice to see your faces again. I wondered if you were going to come back on. So really big thank you, and it was really, really enjoyable to hear your insights. And I've personally gathered lots of information from you. A very big thank you to BPS as well. We really cannot do these events without them. So thank you for joining us. And I hope you guys have been able to go and chat to them, get some insight, ask them the tough questions. I know Will likes the tough questions. If you haven't had the chance, as I did say, they are open until 12:30 in any case. So do go and join those. We have got a number of upcoming events. They are all virtual for the time being. So for those of you that join me in the future, you will get the lovely view behind me that you've got today. But this is just a snapshot of some of them that we have coming up. So we've got a full day conference next week. We have a recruitment leaders conference the week after. And then we have a few different webinars and roundtable sessions. A key highlight for myself, we run our in-house recruitment awards every year, and our entry deadline is the end of July. So you have circa 6 weeks or so to put in your options for that. So as I said, thank you very much to BPS. Thank you very much for joining us. Do go and chat to BPS or in-house recruitment on the stands, and do become a member. But that is us done. Thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you for joining, and we hope to see you all soon.